recording?
Yep.
Okay, folks, we're going to get started promptly. So thank you for coming tonight. Looks like Jay, good to see you. I don't know, some other folks might join us online, but this is our first Wednesday night talk for this year, and so brought back by popular demand from last year. And it's just a way for us to get to know each other a bit better and make some connections. There's a lot of us are, I mean, we know the aviation side of ourselves, like, you know, some of you might know Graham is just a flight instructor, but you might not know that he goes and hangs out with Warren Buffett in Omaha, Nebraska the rest of the year. But now he's a professor at Creighton University, a professor of political science, and in fact, not just a professor, but like head of the department. And yeah, he's studying, well, his one of his specialties is American elections and political behavior. So there's a lot of interesting material on that right now. But tonight he's going to be talking about his experience in England. As you know, you might not have known that Graham was born, you were born over there, right? In Great Britain. And then he was raised in the U.S., but he has ties back there. And so we're lucky tonight to get to hear about his experience. You were there in, what, the spring? Or
April, yeah.
In April. Yeah, so a couple other just housekeeping items. Our next talk will be 2 weeks from now, and Carl and Tom Emery. I don't know, maybe Tom Emery didn't agree to it yet, but
I never heard him agree, but I didn't agree.
Yeah.
I signed him up for it.
Right, so there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes here that a lot of people don't know about, and these guys are very quiet. They go about and do all these things to keep the club running, and we're going to hear a bit about that and just learn more about their love of aviation, how they got into it, and why they feel it's worth it to do what they do for our organization. So we're lucky. I hope people can join and hear about their experiences. And then we had some other people pop up after that. We don't have the Zoom links out yet, but Ron Spangler, who some of you know from his prior life up here, is making a comeback, or he's planning to come back and start soaring again this year. And so he goes back and forth between Boston and is involved at MIT. We'll hear more about what he does, but he is going to do 2 talks, one on zero impact aviation. He has connections with MIT, and so there's a professor there named Stephen Barrett who runs, it sounds like, the Laboratory for Aviation and the Environment, and he's going to lay out a pathway to zero impact and talk about challenges to get there. And then after that, the next talk is going to be zero emission aircraft development at Airbus. So pretty interesting stuff. And it's nice Ron agreed to do that. And then Carl Brandon also offered to do a talk. I don't know if you know about CubeSats, but they're these miniature satellites, and he launched one with his class at VTC, the Vermont Technical College, in 2013. And I guess his is the only one that's still in orbit. Everyone else's has come down that was involved in that launch. So he's going to talk about his secret sauce, what sets his apart. But tonight, yeah, we have Graham's talk, two other housekeeping items. I think we have a cookout this Saturday or this weekend, and then August 13th is a Fifi fundraiser and dinner auction. So watch for announcements about that, and then we'll have a sign up for the dinner, and I hope you guys can come. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Graham.
So do we have all the technology here? Yeah, I guess so. All right. So what I'm going to try to do here first is share my screen.
Yep.
Oh, what happened?
There you go.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys can see that. So yeah, what happened is in mid-April I had about a week off. Well, we have an Easter break at Creighton University where I teach, so I thought I'd zip over to England and see family, because I hadn't seen family in 3 years because of COVID. But also I thought I might sneak in and do a bit of gliding. And I'd always wanted to go to the Midland Gliding Club. I'd been there before as a visitor, but I'd never gone there to fly. So that's what I hope to do. So that's the sign when you first show up at the Midland Gliding Club. And I went there like right before Easter, as I said. And the location of it, hopefully you can see that up there. The location of the Midland Gliding Club is sort of on the English-Welsh border. So you sort of go up to the Midlands and then sort of turn west, and it's out there in the hills between Wales and England. And if you zoom in a little further, that's what you get. So I had to go there. And my cousins that John Tracy and Tom met a few years ago, they came for a ride. They live in Bishop's Castle, which is just nearby. So that's basically where it is in terms of location. So to give you some sense of what it looks like, that's what it looks like from the air. So hopefully you can see that relatively clearly. The way it works, because I always have to walk around, is the staging area for the winch is up here in the middle, so it's kind of here, and then the launch point is about here, and also show you some other pictures in a minute of that. So they winch in this direction, and then if you look here, there's the ridge, the west-facing ridge, and you can see how small those houses are down at the bottom. So it's about a 1,500 foot high ridge, and if you can winch to 1,200 feet on top of that, you've got 3,000 feet nearly above the valley, which is pretty good for soaring. All those little white spots around here are sheep, and that's a subject I'll talk more about later, because they make the flying a little bit interesting. So anyway, that's that. And I got a few more airborne pictures. That's from higher up. You can see some gliders thermaling. You get a better sense there of where the staging area is, because those gliders are in the middle right here. And the winch is up here, so they're launching in that direction. So you winch up, you fly around, and then you land in this direction. So that means what happens is people can winch, fly around, come back, do a circuit, and land here, and then roll back up to the launch point again. So they can cycle, and with the winch you can cycle the launches pretty quickly. So that makes it a very efficient process as well. I got a few more airborne pictures. These airborne pictures were not taken by me. All the rest of the pictures were taken by me, but not the airborne pictures. So this is from a T-21 looking towards the east. And then, same picture, again looking towards the east. And then another picture looking towards the north, and you can sort of see the complex. There's an area there where you can park your RV, and there's a ton of member gliders in that picture. And then there's the clubhouse scene from a glider flying the ridge, north-south, looking over towards the sort of the clubhouse and the windows of the restaurant there. And then another picture, lots of pictures of the club from the air, but it gives you some sense of what we're talking about. So we've got this west-facing ridge looking towards Wales. So it's on that Welsh-English border, and that border is kind of fascinating because it was the site of lots of medieval battles in the medieval period between the Brits and the Welsh when they were slaughtering each other, fairly regularly. So, so historically, it's an interesting place. And there's another picture of the club, again from the air. Notice that hangar towards the right, because that hangar's been there since the club was formed in 1931. And that's going to have some relevance in a second here. So that's another picture. I had to include this one because you can see the purple shading there of the heather on the moortops. So if you go up there at the right time of year, you can smell the heather sort of wafting through the air. So it's a beautiful spot. And again, that gives you some sense of how high above the valley the club is, because you can see it dropping away to the right there. And that's the ridge, where you soar the ridge. Another picture. I'll get through these pictures. So there's some mist in the valley floor. All right, so that's the Long Mynd. So I wanted to go there in part primarily because I wanted to fly the winch, and I figured that flying the winch is an important part of a glider pilot's toolkit. You should, that's something you should try at least once if you've never tried it before, especially since it's the dominant means of launching gliders in Europe. It's kind of fun to give it a shot. But I also went there to chase a few family ghosts, and I sort of want to introduce that, sort of weave that into the story a little bit, because as some of you know, I was born in England, and I was born in Dunstable, which is just north of London, and my dad was a member of the Midland Gliding Club at the time, and which is in Dunstable. So that meant that when I was in my crib, the first noises I heard probably were the tow plane flying overhead. Except back then, the tow planes were tiger moths, not Pawnees. And John Danielle, who said he was going to be here but didn't show up, was actually one of the tow pilots at the time. So my dad knew John back in the day at the time. So there was that connection. So I wanted to sort of do some of that. So there's Dad in 1951, I believe, next to his glider after his first cross country. So I'm throwing that into the mix. And then here's Dad again. And again, I'm weaving the family thing in because it's an important part of the connection to the Long Mynd for me and why I wanted to go there. So that's Dad rigging a Skylark 3 or in the early 50s. And then here he is taking off on the winch at Dunstable. So we're at the London Gliding Club now. The intriguing thing about this picture for me, though, is the fact, if you look closely, all the guys are wearing ties.
Yeah.
You can imagine.
Yeah.
I was tempted to put a tie on when we had one of those, you know, flying days for the young kids a few years ago, but I might still try that. But it's kind of cool. So yeah. Yeah.
That would have worked well today.
Yeah.
90 degrees.
Yeah. This isn't him. He took the picture, but it's being flown by Jeff Nixon, who is one of his members of the syndicate that owned this particular glider at the time. So they're soaring the ridge at Dunstable here in this particular picture. And here's Dad landing out somewhere in Norfolk. He was flying between the London Gliding Club and Yarmouth, I believe, and landed in some field somewhere. Apparently those are little things of hay, apparently. But anyway, so that's his glider landing out. And there he is again. But one of the reasons I just want to bring this up is that my dad, when I was pretty young, listening to his stories about gliding, he always talked fondly about the Long Mynd. And this being a place that he really enjoyed going. So I kind of wanted to go there because he went there a lot. And the road going up to the Long Mynd is this narrow track. I mean, you can only go one way on it, so if you meet somebody coming the other direction, you're screwed. And it has dramatic drop-offs because it's on the side of the ridge. So you've got to go up this steep track, trailing a glider behind you, and hope you don't meet somebody coming the other way, and also hope that you don't go tumbling down the hillside if you make a inadvertent turn to the west. So anyway, this is what's fascinating, because he made it up there in this car and with that trailer.
Oh my gosh.
And that's an old wooden trailer. You know, those things are heavy. And that little car was not overly blessed with horsepower. But also note that hangar in the background. That's the same hangar that was in some of those earlier pictures, built in 1931 and still in use. So he went there and did that. So I went to go fly to sort of carve, the same path through the sky that he did. So there's that. And then I stayed in the bunkhouse when I was up there for 2 nights. And that's exactly the same bunkhouse that my dad is in that picture, but that's in 1951. So I stayed there 71 years later. Same bunkhouse, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yes.
Cool.
These
So yeah.
pictures, how did you get these pictures? Your dad,
Well, what my brother did years ago is he took all the family pictures, and I recommend that you guys do this and scan them.
Okay.
So we have them all up in the cloud.
Wow.
So I just went through all the pictures.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and he's got a ton of old gliding pictures from, competitions in Europe and things like that. So that's that. So yeah, that was the second reason I wanted to go. I wanted to learn the winch, but I also wanted to sort of chase a few family ghosts. So that's what's happened there.
What's the winch? I don't know anything about it.
Well, you're going to find out shortly.
Okay. I thought everybody else might have known.
No, that's what I'm going to get to shortly. Yeah. So here was the first. Oh. Uh-oh. Pearl, I might need your help on the video here.
Oh. Is there no sound, or did you not want the video?
The video? No, I do want to play it. The video is playing on the TV using AirPlay. Is it on? Oh, you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't see it here.
Ah.
Okay, well anyway, that's what it looked like when I first the first morning I woke up. You can see it's pretty rainy and drizzly. Yeah. Bunch of people. And there's the famous hangar that was in my dad's picture. So it wasn't overly, you can see it's a fairly desolate sort of moorland sort of picture to it, which I think is a beautiful thing. But anyway, all right, so now's the next thing, which is absolutely fascinating.
Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Is that self-same hangar I was talking about earlier. The way they stuff gliders in there is absolutely riveting. So this is what it looks like. I mean, they've taken one glider out already, which occupied this space here. But you can see it, K-21 here, and a K-23 here, and an ASK-13 there, and a T-21 there, another K-21 back there, and so on. So as they take the gliders out, here's the process. So here we go. Now we got a couple out. So we still got a few hanging in there. So there's the 21 sitting up on a couple pylons, and you'll notice the little paint marks on the floor, which are crucial to stowing the gliders in there. And now we're back to the two K-13s in the very back. And then now we're almost empty. So now we just got a K-13, a K-8, and a T-21 hanging from the ceiling. And they got all these gliders out of there, I want to say within half an hour. It was amazing.
Wow.
Because I just hung back and watched this delicate choreography that they went through to get all these gliders out. And it was just amazing. Anyway, all right.
And so do they like rotate them around and roll them out? How do they do that?
They're on like, they use dollies and
That was the thing that we could
all sorts of crazy stuff. Yeah. It's like parking airplanes and carriers, aircraft carriers. You know, you gotta be
Wow.
efficient.
You need a proper apprenticeship to learn how
Yes.
to do that.
Yes.
Anyway.
Notes about not getting a hanger that size.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing in England is zoning restrictions are very intense in the English countryside. That's why it still looks the way it does. So getting another hangar built is almost impossible. So they're stuck with that hangar. Anyway, these are some few random pictures of that rainy morning, sort of transpiring. I put that because that's just like, what's his name's glider? Paul Cram's glider, the junior.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. A few rainy pictures, a rainy 21. Still a bit dismal, but it did gradually get brighter. There's the famous hangar with all the gliders extricated. Now this is the glider that I did all my flights in. A K-13, beautiful flying glider, easiest glider to land I've ever flown. And there it is. They just refabricated it, so it looks pretty spiffy. And this is my instructor Dave, the guy I did all my flying with. Kind of a hipster, you know. I mean, plays guitar in a band at night and flies gliders in the day. He's one of the professional flight instructors at the Long Mynd. Good guy. So I did all my flying with him. And that's the glider again. So you can see it's starting to get sunny. This is all the same day. All right, so now we're at the launch point. So I'm showing you a few pictures of the gliders at the launch point, which we saw from the air just now. So that's another K-13, the red one that was at the very back of the hangar. There's the K-13, one of the K-21s, and some dogs, which seem to be ubiquitous at all gliding clubs. And that's looking towards the east, so that's looking towards the Midlands in the distance. We got the west behind us. So there's that. And then more gliders at the launch point. And I'm getting to the winch process. So there's the K-21 ready to go off on the winch. I want to raise, point something out in particular in this picture, because in the foreground you can see a bunch of weak links sort of scattered on the ground. And so depending on the weight of the glider, you use a different weak link on the winch. So if you're launching, a K6 or some light wooden glider, or the K-23, you'd use a smaller one. But if you're launching something big and heavy like a 21, you use another weak link. And so part of the takeoff checklist is the guy running the line will show you the weak link in the cockpit, when you're sitting in the cockpit, to verify it's the right one before he hooks it up. So that's part of the process there. So those weak links are part of the deal. And then here's a K-23, which is again the baby brother of the K-21. It'd be really cool if we had some of those. And then we have some weak links in the foreground again. And then there's the K-13 that I did all my flying in when I was there, again, about to launch. And then here's the launch point again. Now, the reason what I want to stress on this particular picture are two things in particular. Notice the crosswind. Okay, so since we're launching to the south, because remember you want to launch to the south and go up in the pattern, then circuit round and come in and land towards the west. You're launching with a crosswind on the winch, which is kind of interesting. And it's usually a fairly strong crosswind, so you have to account for that. The other thing going on here is we have the retrieve winch here. So that's the retrieve winch. So you have the normal winch with about a 6,000 foot cable, which is about a mile away. And as you go cranking up at your ridiculous angle on that winch, there's another lighter line trailing behind it, a little lower. So when you're at the top of the winch, it forms like a triangle almost. And so the guy who's driving the retrieve winch, which is here, he'll go all out and let the cable run free as you winch upwards. But if something got snagged, he's got a guillotine, that red knob there, he can yank it and break the retrieve cable to stop it snagging. But it seems to just run free pretty quickly. And then as soon as the glider gets to the top of the winch, and it releases, he fires up the retrieve winch as it's coming down and drags it back in again. And then it comes right back up to the launch point, and you can then fling another glider airborne. And that process, once it's happening smoothly, you can crank them out. You can really get lots of launches going on in a relatively short period. But you need to have some pretty well-trained people on both the retrieve winch and the regular winch. And they're connected by radio. They're talking to each other on the radio. And the winch driver needs to know what kind of glider he's towing to affect how much gas he puts on the winch. If it's a light glider, he does something different from a heavy glider. And they're in communication back and forth. So, yeah, some of you may know more about the intricacies of this process than I do, but anyway, there you go. We can talk about that in a little bit. So yeah, that's the retrieve winch. I'm going to show you a picture now of a glider going off on the winch, a video, and hopefully that's working. Yes, it is. So that's the K-13 going off on the winch and then climbing out. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So the secret, I mean, I did 11 flights, and the first one I just had no idea what was going on. Because the acceleration is really intense. You're going 0 to 60 in, I don't know, a nanosecond. So you really get pushed back. The acceleration is intense. And then the key thing is you've got to keep it flat until you get to 60. Don't pull up early. That's how people get injured on the winch, is if they pull up too quickly. And if you go on the web, you can find a few pictures or videos of people screwing it up. So you've got to hold it level until you get to 60. Then once you get to 60, now you've got to pull back. Because if you don't pull back, you're going to be doing 100 miles an hour straight towards the winch, right? Which you don't want to happen. So you pull back at that point, and you're climbing at 45 degrees at about 60 knots. And so you're watching your airspeed indicator very closely. But you're also having trouble, judging, your bank on the winch, because, you're just looking at the sky. So you have to keep looking at your wingtips. First to judge the angle, and also to judge, your bank. Which is so that was one thing I had to get used to pretty darn quickly. So you're going up at 60 at this 45-degree angle, which seems ridiculous to us. But you're motoring along, you're going 60, and you're climbing like a dingbat. So you're going up, and then you get to the top, and then you start to feel it slow down a little bit. So that's when you have to push the nose up over to keep it at 60. So you come over at 60, then you fly above the winch, and it back releases.
Oh, you don't release.
Well, you don't release, it back releases. Yeah. And then just to make sure, you give the release 2 yanks, just to make sure it's free. Mm-hmm. At that point, it drops down. There's a tiny little parachute, I don't know, about 50 feet down the rope, which lets it come down relatively gently. But as soon as it breaks loose, the guy in the retrieve winch fires it up and starts dragging it back. So it starts coming back when it's still in the air. We don't wait till it plops down on the ground. And then you fly away, and you're at 1,500 feet above launch point, and another 1,500 feet above the valley. You got it made. So one of my longest flight was 45 minutes with Dave in the back. The rest of them were kind of short. They put me through a regimen of cable breaks, where you kind of simulated cable breaks, where you're halfway up, and the winch driver cuts the power. At which point you put the nose down really fast and release. And then circle back around, and you can come at that height. You can either go straight ahead. You have to make a decision about whether to go straight ahead or whether to circle around and come back and land towards the west again from that diagram I showed you earlier. And so he did a low-down one. He did a down-low one on me, so I had to land in one of these grassy areas down here straight ahead. And they did some that were higher up, because that was they won't solo you on the winch until they put you through a series of simulated cable breaks. And he's going to solo me, but I couldn't because all the red tape. I had to have an American third-class medical to solo. So I think I'll go back next spring with a third-class medical and see if I can pull that off.
With the crosswind, how did that affect you?
Oh yeah, the crosswind.
Right,
Well, as Rob can tell you, the K-13 has an off-center CG hook for the winch. It's off-center. It's on the left or the right?
Actually, I don't have one. They took it out.
Oh.
But yes, it's on. Yeah, I think they're right.
Well, as I remember, it was on the left, I believe,
Okay.
which meant
Yeah.
no, it was on the right. No, it was on the left. And what that did is that meant when that initial part of the winch was going off and you had that crazy acceleration, it would yaw a little bit to one side. But it yawed to the right, which is what I wanted, because the wind was coming from the right to the left. Yeah, but when the wind was lighter, I had to boot into rudder to straighten it to counter that. And that happens very quickly, and you have to keep the wings level and everything else. And then as you're climbing out with a crosswind, you're one wing down. Okay, so one of these, which I'm going to show you, here's another one, which hopefully you can see. And you might be able to see the line from the retrieve winch going left to right there. Maybe not. No, it's too small. It's taking a little while for them to get sorted. Oh, is this working?
Okay, in the back movement.
Come on. Shouldn't be taking this long.
Yeah, I don't think it started.
How do I start it? I can swipe back again. See, that one's working. But notice he had a bit of, notice how he went, he had the same crosswind, so now he's got his right wing down a little bit to counter the crosswind.
So they keep it, you said 60, 60, and then...
Yeah, hold it, keep it level until you got 60, and then start pulling back and keep it at 60. You know, all the way through.
Doesn't take long.
No.
Yeah, I was trying to figure when you transition there.
No, it doesn't take long at all.
Okay.
Okay, is this one working? That should work now.
No. Is that a picture?
No, it's a video. Well, let's try this one.
Oh, video.
What's going on?
These with your iPhone? I mean, the quality.
It was with my phone, yeah. I'm not sure why these aren't working. That stinks.
AV guy.
Because I got a bunch of,
Oh, jeez. Oh, it's AirPlay. Okay. Hit play here? That do anything? No.
What level iPhone do you have, Graham?
well, I'm a geek, so it's a 13.
The resolution is fantastic.
It
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
is, yeah.
No,
I
it's-
sit here and just look at the photo of that, I mean, and your pictures are really fantastic.
Yeah, the historic ones too of your dad.
Very clear.
They're
Yeah.
so clear, it's crazy.
Probably that's the TV. I think I got a good TV. Oh.
Plus the colors.
Come on, baby.
Oh, is it pulling this video from the cloud? I think it is.
Should be, maybe.
It's downloading the video is what it's doing.
Is it doing that? But
Yeah.
it didn't do that for the first one.
Probably because it was small enough, but you can see the...
I don't know. Is it going to take a while?
I mean, it might.
It's buffering now.
If it's a long video,
Yeah,
it'll
that
take a while.
Oh, jeez.
So you said the K8, the horizontal stab is interesting on that. That's just I haven't seen many K8s. I've seen yours occasionally, but that's a. That's
Oh, you mean the
cool.
13?
Oh, the one you flew. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one. Yeah,
Yeah.
the K13.
Yeah.
That's a trippy design.
But it's a really nice flying glider.
Yeah. You might have to skip the longer videos because it
Oh,
looks like it's
geez.
just going to
Okay.
take a long time to
Oh,
download.
that stinks. All right. Well, the 21 one was useful to see because in the 21 video, he really did. He held it down level longer, you know, until he got to 60, and then sort of went up pretty dramatically. Well, that stinks. How about that one? So when did the first one work?
Yeah.
And the second one didn't.
Probably because it was a smaller
Nah,
video.
this one's working.
It's working now.
Is it?
Yeah, there it goes.
So that's the line crew.
You just have to
doing
give
this.
it time to download.
Yeah.
The slingshot.
They taking up slack or something?
There you go.
Yeah, there it goes. So he's going. So notice how he keeps it. Well, he went up kind of. Okay,
Flat
sort of
to
level.
50 and then just
There you go.
pitch.
Yeah.
Oh,
Up
I've
he
got to
goes.
go there. No, I really.
That looks like so much
that would
fun.
be What a beautiful place.
And what was the ceiling there, Graham?
Yeah.
The most
It broke up pretty quickly though. It was only like
It's
that for a
UK,
short
so we're gonna
while.
launch right into
Yeah.
it. That's right.
The cool thing about going there though is it's just like coming here. It's exactly the same people. They just have different faces. You know, it's the same mix of personalities. It's exactly the same as Sugar Soaring. They just have different accents and slightly different faces. So is this one gonna work now? I'm just trying to just try
It's
it one more
loading.
time.
Yeah, you just have to get a
It's
timer
working.
download.
Oh, there. Okay, something's happening.
So when you say they launch gliders pretty quickly, what do you like?
Yeah,
You're
what-
talking minutes or what? Like 10 minutes?
I don't know, like you could do one every 5-10 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
A lot quicker than a tow plane anyway.
So
here we go.
Yeah, so that's the 21.
They didn't, it's just,
Wow.
take it over.
geez, they get 60 quickly. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
The acceleration is bizarre because you get you really get going fast.
And so did they ever have issues with the cable? Right?
Well, they do the simulated cable brakes as
Yeah.
part of the training. I don't know if they ever actually had a real brake. They did have an accident a few years ago where somebody just pulled up too quickly.
Yeah.
The big mistake. You've got to keep it flat until you get the speed up and then climb out. So they did have that accident.
I did it on actual cables for a long time, and they broke all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But
The
they have
Spectra stuff is fantastic.
Well, they have different material now. What's it called? You mentioned.
Spectra.
Yeah.
Oh, so they actually use Spectra for
Yeah,
that?
it's Teflon
Oh,
cable.
Yeah.
really?
It doesn't break.
Strong, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying the cable is, you said earlier, it's 6,000 feet.
Something along those lines.
That's incredible.
Yeah. They got huge drums. I wish I had taken a picture of the winch itself. I mean, the drums are huge. And it's a profession. They have professional winch drivers because it's a skill set. It's a pretty unique skill set. Because they have to be able to judge. They don't use the same speed for every glider, and there's different conditions. So it takes a bit of nuance to learn how to drive the winch effectively.
And a lot of the winches are driven by a big reciprocating motor of some sort, right?
Right. Though some of the newer ones are electric.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That wing runner doesn't have to run all the way far.
That's beautiful.
Used to do that on big flights.
Really?
Yeah.
I have to get an iPhone. Don't
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So there's a few
I?
videos of
Resolution
some of
is
the
fantastic, huh?
winch launches. And I wanted to show you a picture of the day sheet just to show that it's kind of like our day sheet.
Very modern.
But you get a sense of, I mean, you can see my name on the right-hand column there under Pilot 2 since I was in the student. So there's one. There's another one. My name keeps appearing all the way down that list. Cable brake for somebody in there. And then this one here, again, my name keeps appearing.
They should number theirs though.
Yeah, but they actually had to number theirs, yeah. And they used to have tow planes, but now they're exclusively winch. So, but then the interesting thing about this is you notice that now the top few lines are in my handwriting, because once you show up there, they give you the day sheet and say, do it, you know. So I got stuck doing the day sheet for quite a while. So that's my handwriting there. And then, you know, I don't know why I threw this in here, but it gives you some sense that it's, you know.
Is that 48 flights in that day?
Yeah, that gives you some sense.
Yeah.
You know, of how many flights you can crank through. We wouldn't be able to do 48 flights. And the other advantage is for training. Imagine with some of our students, people who are learning to fly, if we could crank 11, I did 11 flights in 2 days. Imagine we can do 11 flights in 2 days with some of our folks. I mean, you'd really get people going through the process. So it's pretty good that way. Okay, and so then, you know, the day comes to an end. As you can see, it's sunny. There's a bunch of paragliders flying around in the vicinity. So they like to fly in the valley as well. So that's looking more towards the west. That's from the dining room window. And then there's some of those sheep in the windsock. And there's the sunset.
Lovely.
Beautiful.
Again with the iPhone. So those iPhones are pretty crazy. Pretty amazing. So that's looking towards Wales. Okay, so what I wanted to sort of, we can talk more about winching later, but I also wanted to sort of talk about some of the cool things they do at that club, which we may or may not be able to do, but they're still kind of cool to consider. So here's the first thing I really liked about the club.
Bangers and bangers.
The full English breakfast.
Yeah.
It's just, oh my God, it's heaven. So that's the full English breakfast. And so they have
Is that avocado toast?
no. This is decadent carnivorous stuff. So that's kind of neat. The other thing, here's the sort of the cafeteria. The other thing is that everything stops when the winch driver wants to have lunch. So at the Long Mynd, what happens? And this is kind of cool, because when the winch driver says it's lunchtime, everything stops and everybody converges on the bar, or not the bar, but the dining room. And so everybody ends up eating lunch together, just because that's the way it is. And it's kind of cool. And that happened, the 2 days in a row. Everybody sort of drops, downs tools and heads for the dining room, and it's pretty neat. So there's that, which I thought was kind of interesting. And the woman who runs the kitchen, Helen, was really great. So that was fun. And then, of course, at the end of the day, every gliding club in England has a bar. And there's the Long Mynd's bar. And, the local brewery, the 3 Tons, which is the local Shropshire brew, is on tap there. I should have taken a picture when there were lots of people standing around with their pints. I got it before everybody showed up. But it's only £2.50 a pint, which is cheaper than your regular pub. So I think it's subsidized by the club. And in the back of that hangar I was showing you with all the gliders, they keep, the kegs are stored back there, and they feed into the bar, which is on the other side of the hangar, back at the rear of the hangar. So £2.50 for a pint, it's up like $3.50, $4, something like that. It's not a bad deal. And so you could really get tanked if you weren't careful.
Stagger back to the bunkhouse.
Yeah, but it's part of everybody converges on the bar after flying. It's just what you do because it's there. So that's kind of neat. Okay. Another thing which I thought was kind of neat is in the hangar, they have this big chalkboard. Where they have, the glider, whether it's the K21, K13, K23, whatever it is, and then the status of the glider, and then a fault if there's a problem, and then who discovered the fault. So all the status of all the gliders is listed on a chalkboard on the side of the hangar, which, can be erased and updated and changed depending on what's going on with the glider. So everybody knows who needs a 100-hour or whatever in terms of what's happening. And people have to take the responsibility of putting stuff on the board when things go wrong. So that was kind of interesting. And then just for the hell of it, I had to show this. I thought they had the best jack ever. And I know this is a crazy thing to introduce in a presentation, but this jack is the best. Because it's got this thing for the fuselage, which fits perfectly, and it's super strong, and yeah. So changing a tire was easy with that thing. So we got to get one of those.
Can we have one?
Sure. And there it is under the K13. I mean, it's just such an amazing piece of equipment. So we should get one of those. Yeah. All right, and then here's a picture of the K23. Now, it'd be cool to get a K23, but that's not why I'm showing this picture. The reason I'm showing this picture is I didn't get any pictures of the sheep, but they're there. You can see the sheep in the background. So, when you're there, you don't see any lawn mowing equipment. There's no tractors, no reels, no hand mowers, nothing. There's just tons of sheep wandering around. Which means there's tons of sheep poop everywhere. So, but it's that little, sheep poop. It's kind of those little balls, kind of stuff. So if you're stepping on it, it's not a big deal, really. But it's everywhere. So that's how they cut the grass. It's just having sheep wandering around. That's a little bit disconcerting because I was on downwind in the K13 with Dave, and he's humming, he's humming away, and I say, well, Dave, there's a sheep standing at my end point. And he says, don't worry, he'll move. And he goes back to humming again, right? So I turn base. I say, Dave, the sheep is still at my end point. He says, don't worry about it. So I turn final, and the sheep kind of looks at me, and then just scampers off to the side like it's no big deal. And sure enough, I plonked on the grass and no worries. And they've never had an issue. They've never had an issue with drivers hitting sheep. Because the sheep are smart enough to run off. And when they're doing the winches, the sheep are pretty timid. They stay away from the winch, the launch site and the winches and all that kind of stuff. It's only when you're coming into land that you have to worry. But then they just kind of look up and give you a casual look and then saunter off. So it's not a big deal.
Do they put noisemakers on the gliders?
So they're everywhere. So that's kind of interesting, I thought. And the other thing which I thought was really cool I know Rob will appreciate this, but some of the rest of you have. The T21 was made by Slingsby, old open two-seat side-by-side glider. Not to circle around to my dad, but one of the first dates he had with my mom was taking her for a ride in one of these things. So at the Dunstable Gliding Club. So it's painted in RAF colors, but there it is. That's the way it was. The one that was hanging from the ceiling in the hangar. Yeah. So there that is. There's the cockpit, side-by-side seating, which is unusual for a glider. And it's kind of a big barge, but it'd be really fun. And then here it is going off on the winch. Hopefully this one will work.
Yeah, let's go.
Yep. And that one's airborne so quickly. He gets the angle up and off he goes. And you can see the little parachute thing that about 50 feet below the glider, the little ball. Yeah.
That was cool.
So with that glider, the winch driver isn't gonna turn up the gas as much. He's gonna tow it much slower because it doesn't need as much gumption or as much grunt to get off the ground. So that's sort of neat. And then they do need more people in the syndicate if you want to join. Look at the price: £100 to join the syndicate, £15 a month to have a share in the T21. My cousin Henry was a member of that syndicate for quite a long time. Sarah and Andy's daughter for Tom, who met them, or son, for Tom, who met them, Tom and John, who met them. And then here's the final kicker. This is the most impressive slide of all. This is my bill, okay? And I had to include this, all right? Because the total was 238 pounds, but they knocked 59 pounds off. So it was 80 pounds for accommodation. But that means my flying bill was 178 pounds 50. Okay? Wow. This is going to make all of you guys want to go over there. I did 11 flights with an instructor. 11 flights with an instructor. That comes to 16 pounds 28 per flight, or 19.50 per flight. So each flight cost me $20. That's insane.
Well, great.
I mean, that's just completely insane. And I had to show you the actual bill because I know you wouldn't believe me. And I had to show you the day sheet with all my name on there 11 times because you wouldn't believe me. Yeah. So there it is.
And the club is sustainable?
Well, I think their expenses are lower because I think they own all the land and they're running winches rather than tow planes, and so, and the restaurant is a ton of business from hikers and things, people not associated with the club. And they do have a huge membership. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are, but it's one of the bigger clubs in England. So they've got a big financial sort of foundation to make this, or to make it possible. But they're the numbers. I swear to God, those are the numbers. I'm not prepping it. They're the real numbers.
There's a syndicate for it.
Yeah.
How
All
much
right.
is a rope break winch launch?
Well, I mean, it was a package, so they just said show up for. It was so on the top, and they called it a course.
Okay.
From 11th of April to 14th of April, and that's the cost, and then it's all you can eat. Basically. So it's not done on a. Now, part of the deal though is I was only one of 2 people in that course, and the other guy only showed up for 1 day. So that may have skewed the results a bit. Normally there's 4 or 5 people in a course, so I wouldn't have got perhaps as much flying.
Yeah.
So if you want to go in, before the summer, go in the spring, and then there's more access to it. Yeah. So that was mind-boggling, and I just, yeah. Anyway, all right. Now the other thing I wanted to show you, and I hope this works, just to wrap this up, is a video, and I hope the audio and everything comes through. Do you think it will? I'll find out.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're playing it, so maybe. No, it's not coming through.
Try now.
Okay, so here we are at the Long Mynd, and we're about to do a bungee launch
Bungee launching is how most gliders were launched in the early days, and it's the reason that this club's here.
So, let's go gliding.
Now, we've been doing that ever since the 1930s, and probably the only gliding club in the world now, I think, that does it regularly.
It's a splendid place, good company, and aeroplanes to play with.
The Midland Gliding Club was 1934 in Handsworth in Birmingham, and then moved here permanently. We're in Shropshire, just south of Shrewsbury, very close to the Welsh border. Behind me you can see the Welsh border, which is what makes this a fantastic place to fly, because we have the advantage of ridges, our own 5-mile long ridge.
Running north-south, facing slightly northwest. We've got a nice 15-20 knot westerly wind blowing. We're launching to the west, staying up on the ridge, a good steady 4 knots lift all the way along the ridge.
Snowdonia is not that far away, 80k or so. We can get there on a good day from here fairly easily. We can get out to the coast, we can go south, we can go inland into the Midlands, and it is a brilliant place to fly from. We have the benefit of flying 7 days a week here, most of the year round, which means that training is very good for people who are starting off in gliding.
What a better place. There is no better place to learn to fly, really. I'm doing my solo pilot's license. You can start with gliding when you're 12 years old, so you can go solo by 14. And my ultimate goal is to go solo. And who knows what will be beyond that, but I really hope I can set myself new goals once I reach that goal. That's the whole point, I think, of doing things like this, that there is a goal at the end of it, but then you keep pushing yourself further and further.
We do first flight experiences. If you come along here, you can have a short flight in a glider with a trained and often professional instructor.
Takeoff is quite exhilarating because it's very quick. We went along the West Ridge, so I was told, with Charles, the flying instructor, and then we went up to 3,000 feet.
But once you get to the top of the launch, you can just see everything around you, and there's no better place that you could be in the world. It's just amazing.
The views are brilliant, the flight was brilliant, the instructor was excellent, so it was really good.
And with that first flight, which gives you a taster of what gliding is about, we give you 3 months free membership of the club. And hopefully at the end of that 3 months, if you make good use of it, you will have been bitten by the bug like the rest of us.
Owned by the club then, or are there a lot of individual ones?
There's a ton in those trailers. There's a lot of privately owned gliders there as well, yeah. Did I lose the Zoom?
Yeah, we lost it a while back.
Oh, did we really?
Well, we only had Jay and like.
Oh, okay, all right,
so I mean,
okay.
but I mean, I'll send them a link to the
right.
video so they'll get to see it.
All right. Oops. Sorry.
Reminds about.
Anyway.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know. Comments, questions.
Good job.
I hope it sells you guys on the possibility or the thought of flying elsewhere.
You're a good salesman, I gotta say.
Jen, I just booked our trip.
Yeah.
You'll see the confirmation on Expedia.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Now is like the ridge. How many people plop down or don't make it?
There's a couple nice standard. There's some big fields at the bottom which are allocated for landing. If you're going back and forth on the ridge and you can't get back up again, so yeah. But it is a huge pain because that little road going down the side of the ridge is pretty treacherous. So once you got your glider up there, it's there for life, pretty much. You can't get it out. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's a pretty hairy road.
Did it bother with making it wider?
No way, it's part of the character.
So your dad's car
Yeah,
that dragged that huge wooden box,
yeah.
was that an MG?
I think it was a an Austin something.
Yeah.
Austin Healey.
Yeah, no, an Austin,
Austin. Yeah.
7 or something like that. Yeah.
Oh wow.
If you watch All Creatures Great and Small, the vet drives the same car.
Oh.
I know John watches that.
Yeah,
so-
that's a great show.
Yeah, it's that. It was a pretty old beat up car, but yeah, but you know,
It was probably about 40 horsepower.
yeah, it's not a lot. So that was 1951-ish. Yeah. The date on the back of the picture was 1951.
Reminds me of the Iceland soaring group that dragged their gliders to the top of the hill with a pony.
Yeah.
You know, very well determined is the way I describe it.
Yeah.
They were gonna fly.
Oh, hard
Or
on
they
the
went
pony.
to the bar first, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Graham, did they get any wave off the Mynd?
He did mention wave in the video, didn't he? But I have a feeling that might come off the Welsh mountains.
Okay.
Yeah, to the west. But they do get wave there. I didn't hear much talk of it. But I mean, you can easily thermal away. You know, once you're off on the winch, if the conditions are right. Yeah. Yes.
Jennifer spent a lot of time in Corning, New York, and Corning is a glider. Well, it's Big Flats, probably closer, but they many years ago were using a winch for takeoffs, and they had some trouble. I don't remember exactly what it was. So it's tow planes there now, but that is an extremely active club.
I wonder if their problem was not having enough room for a winch, because I mean the distance between the launch point and the winch itself was about a mile. I mean, so we're talking a long way. At least it looked like a mile. It certainly looked longer than our runway by a long shot. And we're nearly 3,000 feet, so it was a long. So you needed, and I think the runway at Elmira or at Harris Hill is pretty short.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so it'd be tricky doing that.
Well, the whole thing is in Europe, you know, they cost of fuel and post-war they were destitute. And
Yeah.
so power planes were not favored.
And how often does it rain?
Well, a lot.
You just go drink beer, apparently, right?
But in 2004, I went there on New Year's Day, and they were flying the ridge off the winch. So they were nuts, and there was a low cloud deck, but the wind was blowing up the hills. They just need a short little winch, and then you're on the ridge, and boom, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Wonderful.
That's brilliant. The photography, Graham, was fantastic. Man.
How big was that landing area? Coming behind the line.
Yeah, you mean landing from east to west?
Yeah.
It was fairly large.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to tell. I would say it was about as big as, I don't know, here to the end of the runway, probably.
Yeah.
Here to the end of floor.
Yeah.
But it was wide, so you've got lots of room to maneuver if the sheep don't move. But they always seem to. So.
I didn't see golf carts. What if?
No golf carts.
You just roll. People are good enough.
Yeah, I guess people are just pushing them around. Yeah, but if you land just right, you know, you can wheel it up and yeah, you're right. There weren't no golf carts at all.
Yeah.
Just and there's also a few horses around as well, so they're not. I don't think they're quite as bright, but as the sheep are. But
blue.
So they carbon footprints. The winch must be powered by diesel, or like.
It is, but as Tim and others have pointed out, they're going for electric now in a lot of clubs. Electric winches, which I think are more reliable and you know, you could envision the system where you got a whole bunch of solar panels on the roof of your hangar, and then you charge up your winch overnight, and maybe you just be completely. I don't know. Maybe that might be possible at some point.
So are the winches purpose built
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. So if you go look in the back of Sailplane and Gliding, they have advertisements for different companies that make winches and things. So yes.
You usually have a pretty big block Chevy or some big gas engine, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Big flywheel.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they must be phenomenally expensive because there's no market for that.
Yeah. And there's also professional winch drivers as well. So if you learn that skill set, actually the guy who runs the winch at the Long Mynd was leaving right about the time I was there, and so they were desperately looking around for a new winch driver. So that'd be a kind of a fun skill set to acquire, and
Yeah, definitely.
spend your days doing that.
Graham, I think the main reason, in at least in continental Europe, that they're using winches is because people are complaining about the noise of tow lines. And in Switzerland, for instance, it's illegal to have tow planes because of the noise. So I think that creates a market.
Yeah. But also just running power planes in England is just ridiculously expensive, with the gas and the airspace requirements and landing fees and all sorts of crazy stuff. So, so for people who might gravitate to power planes here, they just all go to gliding. And then when you see the prices, you can see why. I mean, so the clubs in England are in Europe in general are they're crowded places, and there's lots of enthusiasm and interest in the sport, and so it's pretty dynamic. And they do have youth programs like that young gal with the posh accent was talking about.
Posh accent.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
That's great.
No, tell me.
It was the
57 minutes.